I'm very proud to introduce Ars Electronica to you. I will briefly introduce myself. I will introduce Ars Electronica, and I will talk a little bit about expanded animation. So this is a concept that we are working on since 10 years, and there is a book release we have a book release that I will briefly introduce to you. So this is a tight program. I have 30 minutes, and after this presentation you have the possibility to join the screening and to see examples, a quite interesting selection of Ars Electronica. So a brief introduction. Who has been at Ars Electronica already, at the festival? Perfect. So this is a festival that is quite old. This year we have celebrated the 40th anniversary. And Ars Electronica has actually 4 divisions. What you can see here on the picture is the Great Danube. It's located in Linz, Austria. So we share a very beautiful river. And you see the Ars Electronica Museum. This is the Ars Electronica Center. Is one part. There is the Ars Electronica Festival as a providing ground, started in 1979, and Ars Electronica, which is an international competition on media art. And there is also one very important division, Ars Electronica Future Lab. So here you can see the history, 40 years of Ars Electronica. We have a couple of subdivisions, like, for example, Ars Electronica Solution, which is a subdivision of the R&D facility, so to speak, Future Lab, Ars Electronica Future Lab. So the first thing I will introduce is the museum. The museum is the center of Ars Electronica. You can see a lot of installations. The focus of Ars Electronica is Ars, Art, Technology and Society. So you have a bunch of media art projects that you can experience. So it's really an interactive installation. A lot of installations that you can get in touch. So one very important or a top attractor at Ars Electronica is, I will make it a little bit, is the so-called deep space. This is actually a playground for artists. We have a lot of collaborations with institutions, universities, artists that can create artworks for deep space. So you have an 8K front projection and 8K bottom projection with a lot of technology, interactive environments, co-located games, or stereoscopic movies can be presented at deep space, even performances, etc. So this is one of the playgrounds where we work together with a lot of artists. The museum is, of course, a dynamic field. We have a lot of new exhibitions. This year, the current exhibition is Understanding Artificial Intelligence or the Nature of Data. I give you just a couple of slides to see how these exhibitions are changing. So this is the current exhibition. So the next pillar of Ars Electronica is the Ars Electronica Festival. Here you can see an overview of all these festivals. In 1979, the festival was very small with a lineup of 20 artists and researchers. Since 1986, the festival is held annually, and there is a specific theme, an overarching topic on the topic Art, Technology and Society. So in 1986 it was free sound, and this year we had the topic out of the box. So 3 years ago it was artificial intelligence. So it's always a discussion, what is hot topic in the field of media art. So 3 years ago, artificial intelligence. 2 years ago, it was, last year, it was error, the art of imperfection, facing the topic. An error can be, of course, a driving force for new interventions. And this year we had this subtitle, which is a very nice title, The Midlife Crisis of the Digital Revolution. So a 40-year-old festival is facing a midlife crisis, thinking about the future, what are the challenges for a media art festival, and also for artistic interventions in the field of technology, society. So what you see here are a couple of impressions. The festival is quite a huge festival. We have on 4 or 5 days more than 100,000 visits. There are a couple of conferences. Of course, there is a conference on the overarching topic, but also a lot of smaller conferences on different topics. So another division is the R&D facility Future Lab, which is very famous for the Spexels. You have just seen an image of one of these Spexels. These are animated drones equipped with RGB lighting, where you can animate a swarm of drones in the sky. So these are this is an image of drone 100. So in 2015, Future Lab started with 100 drones, but now they can animate more than 2,000 pixels in space. So this is a R&D facility also connected with artists and doing a lot of research. A very important pillar of Ars Electronica is the international competition. So there was the idea in 1987 to award the Oscars for media arts, and they came up with the idea of the Golden Nika. And this is really a very prestigious award, actually, for a media artist. As it's the oldest media art festival, it is, of course, the most important prize. So they started with thinking about strong roots to traditional art forms. So computer graphics, computer animation, and computer music. So it's fine arts or filmmaking, digital filmmaking, and digital music. So this was the starting point. When we are facing the evolution of these categories, you see that this is a very dynamic field. We are always inviting experts discussing these categories each year. And as you can see here, in the 90s, there was a discussion on interactive art, and they started with Roy Escott, Jeffrey Shaw, with a category interactive art. You can see that the category computer graphics actually merged with computer animation. In the 90s, there was a discussion on net-based art, and then there is changing, the title of the category changed from World Wide Web to Net Vision, Net Excellent, and now it is digital communities. There is another very interesting category that evolved in 2006-07. So there was a festival with the topic hybrid art, hybridity, and since 2007 there is the category hybrid art. And this is now changing into another category, artificial intelligence and live art. So it's a really evolving field, and I will give you an insight into the evolution of computer animation. And you see, they started with the title computer animation, then they added visual effects, they expanded to film, and since 2 years, they narrowed it down to computer animation. And this is a quite interesting evolution. So the first winner, Golden Nika winner, was John Lasseter, who got the Golden Nika for, of course, his pioneering piece, Luxor Junior. So that time, it was quite clear what is computer animation. But as you can see, a year later, here is an example of a very experimental piece in the field of animation. Peter Weibel, an Austrian media artist, got an honorary mention for his piece that is actually exploring artifacts, moire effects. So this is kind of an interesting thing to have pieces like John Stavely. This is actually the first female artist that got a golden Nicker in the history of Ars Electronica. This is a very personal piece on anorexia, eating disease, a very artistic approach. But at the same time, pioneering works like visual effects for The Abyss got an honorary mention as well. And there was an ongoing discussion between what is Ars Electronica awarding. Is it more giving prizes to industry pieces, or is it more in going in this direction, media art and artistic approaches? So there is, of course, an evolving field. On this slide you see the top prize winners in the category, and I have just tagged the last 10 years, and I call these pieces in the fringes of computer animation. So you see a couple of pieces that you may know, like ILM got an extra golden Nicker for the visual effects, but also people that are doing, still are in the art world. But since 2008, there was a kind of crisis in the category, because everything is digital animated anymore. And Madame Tutli-Putli, a stop-motion piece, was awarded the Golden Nicker for computer animation. Of course, there is a very innovative visual effects technique, mapping real eyes on stop-motion puppet, but it is a stop-motion piece. And since then, the category evolved, expanded actually, and was looking more for pieces that are in the art world. So this is a selection of pieces which can be tagged as expanded animation. So there are projection mappings, there are pieces, for instance, Descent, that is actually a virus. So this is, or David O'Reilly's Everything, that is a computer game. So we were facing this big challenge to invite a lot of different disciplines into the category computer animation. And this was a kind of interesting thing, because when I was looking into the history of Ars Electronica, I found this very broad discussion at the beginning of Ars Electronica. So this was in 1982, the second edition of Ars Electronica, and there was also quite vivid interaction between Nam June Paik, Charlotte Moorman, or Stan van der Beek, and also people from the industry like David DiFrancesco and Elvie Ray Smith from LucasArts. So Ars Electronica invited artists and also people from the industry to discuss the current trends in the art world. And we thought this is a great idea to embrace this discussion. And now we have a kind of similar structure at the Ars Electronica Animation Festival, which is a sub-festival inside the big Media Art Festival. So we have a symposium where we invite people from industry, from the art world, but also researchers or game designers, scholars, etc., to discuss interesting topics. But we also invite prize winners at the pre-forum. We have exhibitions. We invite people developing artworks for the deep space exhibitions, VR exhibitions, etc. So this is actually the starting point to discuss the topic expanded animation, and we started in 2013 with the first symposium. The title was Mapping an Unlimited Landscape, and with the thought, okay, just invite a couple of people thinking about what is going on in computer animation. We, for example, invited Susan Buchan. She wrote the book Pervasive Animation at that time in 2013. She just released the book, and this was for us a very interesting thing. So the discussion, animation is much more than what we are thinking of. So it's of course more than cartoons, and it's more than moving images on screen. It can be everything. It can be animated pixels in space, for instance. And that was a quite interesting discussion. I will just give you very briefly insight. The next topic was more on the intersection of gaming. We invited scholars, but also curators. The third edition was entitled Deviation and Anomalies at the Intersection of Art and Technology. We had a very interesting discussion with people from science, but also Eric O, who is a very talented animator, who had a totally different approach to this topic of deviation and anomalies. Another topic was the alchemy of animation. This was at the same time the overarching topic at Ars Electronica, and this is an ongoing discussion where we are also participating to the overarching topic. So if it's artificial intelligence, we are thinking about bringing this topic in animation as well. So hybrid technologies in animation was the topic in 2017. For example, Lev Manovic was on stage, but also Stefan Schwingerler, who is an expert in game studies, game art. And we, of course, invited artists like David O'Reilly and Nikita Diacour discussing their approaches in artistic ways. Last year, we had the topic interfaces in motion. So for instance, using VR technology or the human body to create animation in public space, or co-located interaction to create animations together, so new interfaces for animation. This year we had the same topic, midlife crisis, and we, for example, invited Austrian artists Vigil Wittrich and Martin Reinhardt, pioneers in the field of experimental animation, but also a very talented guy that is in the field of animation and games, Michael Flae. And this is the output of this symposium and discussion, so the collection of the first 6 edition. And as the symposium, and as similar to this structure, the book has the same structure. We have an introduction into the topic expanded animation, expanded cinema, and to its roots. We have a theoretical chapter where artists, researchers are connecting to the pieces, and we have also a very interesting selection of expanded animation from 2011 and 2018. So expanded animation is actually a term that is quite interesting in the last year. So there is one edition that you probably may know that was released in 1976 with the title Experimental Animation. And there was already a kind of, this is the forerunner for expanded animation. But this year, another book was released, Experimental and Expanded Animation. And this is a current position, and the other book is more discussing the history of experimental and expanded animation. So what is my point? The first introduction covers all these roots and all these connections to Stan van der Beek, who is actually the father of expanded cinema, but also there is a lot of interesting things are going on in Austria with expanded cinema, like Wally Export or Peter Weibel. And this is the list of the articles, and you see the first article is a first step into Stan van der Beek's approach. You see the movie drome in the background, where Stan van der Beek actually built his installation with a lot of different medias, and this is a kind of forerunner for the deep space, so to speak. Birgitta Hosea wrote an article on paracinema and the dematerialization of animation connected to Austrian artist Wally Export. And I contributed an article on the topic deviation, anomalies, and I discussed all these anomalies, artistic anomalies, connected to Friedrich Kittler's theory, misuse of army properties. So as you can see here, these are drones equipped with RGB lighting, and these drones are visible in sky. Kittler's theory is about the misuse of army property, that is every medium is a kind of misuse. And this is quite interesting because no one is thinking about these roots. But drones usually don't want to be seen because they want to observe. But in this case, it's the opposite. And this is quite an interesting thing. Similar to Max Hagler's paper, here is also a kind of anomaly discussed in his paper. He is, in his article, Rupturing Vision Towards an Expanded Sensory. He is analyzing binocular rivalry artistic experiments. So stereoscopy is, of course, providing two different images that are slightly different. But if you provide totally different images, then you can create new visions, and this is called binocular rivalry. So this is quite interesting approach. This is another example from the research section. Stefan Schwingerle discussed David O'Reilly's piece at the intersection art, game, and animation as an artistic medium. And we have also asked a lot of artists writing about their own artistic approach. For instance, Marcus Kay wrote an article about his intersections, animation, and science. So in his paper, Simulating Scientific Observation, he is discussing his own artistic approach. Or Ina Conradi and Marc Gervais are addressing interfaces, screens in public spaces, like this one is the Media Art Nexus at NTU Singapore, that is also a playground for artists in the environment, in the public space. And finally, Vigil Wittrich supported the book with his essay on images between digital realism and analog believability. This is a screenshot of his current piece, 360-degree version of TX Reverse. So this is a kind of slit scan intervention where you swap, change time and space axis in recording the movies. The final selection is my answer. What is expanded animation? A current selection of pieces, artworks that can be tagged in the field of expanded animation. Of course, in spite of the vast spectrum, some evolving trends can be noted. What we can see here is flux, an art installation, and this is in this tradition of expanded cinema in the context of art gallery spaces. A quite interesting approach is that we have a Golden Nika winner in 2012 that is actually an installation. So this is a rare window loop, is actually found footage deconstruction of Hitchcock's classic animation Rear Window, film, sorry. So it's a deconstruction of all these different scenes in one scene and a 20-minute loop. This second Golden Nico winner is forms by Mimo Ekten and Quaiola, two very talented media artists, and this is an installation for the exhibition A Blink in the Eye, Blink of an Eye. In 2012, you see an image from the installation, and here you see a making of what you can see actually. So they connected to Olympic Games and captured the motion out of these historic footages and created motion sculptures. Similar to this project, so we'll skip this. Walking City got the Golden Nicker a year later, also an art piece, a piece that is actually structuralizing the human motion. It's an 8-minute piece. The next Golden Nicker winner, Alex Verhurst, presented Temp Mort. This is an installation where you can interact with your mobile phone, so you can actually get in contact with these people and talk with them, and they are talking to you. This is the installation setup at Ars Electronica's exhibition Cyber Arts. Another quite interesting piece is this intersection of interactivity. So we have a category interactive art, but also animation, games, interactive animated installations are on these fringes, and artists don't even know. They ask me, should I submit at which category, and I always tell them, okay, there is anyway a discussion if the categories or the pieces are on the fringes. They can be moved during the jury session. This is an artist, a prime example for this discussion, augmented hand series by Golan Levine and his team. Golan got a lot of awards in different categories, so in animation, interactive, digital communities. His piece is quite simple. There is a black box and you can enter your, move in your hand, and what you see here is actually that in real time, your hand is distorted, so you have a kind of uncanny feeling of your own hand. So this is just one example of the discussion between interactive art and animation. And of course, it's an animated piece. It is real-time animation, but considering the piece of David O'Reilly, it's a computer game and it's interactive. All VR pieces, 360-degree projects are interactive as well. But David O'Reilly submitted also his animation, and he actually submitted an animation piece and also the interactive version. So both is possible. Another fringe of expanded animation is, of course, connected to the root of expanded cinema, going out of the black box cinema, are these interfaces. So light barrier, for example, is a very innovative, huge interface in space, or projection mappings, of course, are tagged as expanded animation, or connected with a lot of different technology like Box. This is, I think, a piece that you have probably seen because it's very famous, but animating robots in space with a lot of technology, have the possibility to animate these robots in space. But on the other hand, there are very simple analog installations where you have 3D printings that are kind of toys that you can use as an animation. Rediscovering of anima by Akinori Goto is a very great example. So he has a lot of 3D printed sutropes that you can watch, really beautiful pieces. Another quite interesting fringe, thinking about Madame Tutli-Putli, this intersection of analog and digital animation, is a great example. Boris Labé's animated particles in hand-drawn animation. This is an example of new interfaces. So Norman is an animation software that you can use in virtual reality. A quite interesting thing, and this is my kind of closing note, is of course that artists sometimes don't consider their work in the field of animation. So this is a prime example. Western Flag by John Jarrett is actually an art piece that is not really an animation, but it uses a lot of technology simulation. It's a real-time animation that is going on for years, and it's a real-time animation with a lot of animation technology. So this is something that we have as an animation festival, as a media festival, to encourage people to think about their project. Of course, we are installations like Out of Exile. There is a stronger connection to animation. What you can see, what is quite interesting is that we have theoretical articles that reflect on these current selections. So you have, for instance, an article on VR experiences in the context of animation. We have a lot of further examples, for instance, the Chimera of M by Sebastian Bürkner, who is also using binocular rivalry. Max Hattler talked about this topic, also bringing other artists like Shadowland, which is a movie with binocular rivalry, or installations in that context. So if you are interested in Ars Electronica history with these connections to animation, I can recommend you this website, archive at Ars Electronica. We have a huge archive with all these submissions at the pre, and also a lot of publications, and this book is also online on the archive. There is an initiative which I would really recommend, is a database, Women in Media Arts, where you can search through the history of Ars Electronica, where you can use it as for your research actually. So it's not just on the gender topic, but also diversity. So thinking about diversity in media arts, this is really a great starting point to think about that. The book is online, but of course you can buy it on Amazon or any other bookshops that are selling this book. So thank you so much. It was very tight, but I think we have a couple of minutes if there is a question. If not, I think we should have a small break, because the screening should already start now, but I will. Should we start in 5 minutes? This is good. So I will be around, so if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask me. Thank you so much.